Welcome back to the Green Hour. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Friday. We are getting ready for the weekend here at FM91. Today we have Ahmad Shabbar, the founder of Pakistan's Maholiyati Tahaffuz movement, with us today. I'll tell you a little bit more about Ahmad Shabbar because I'm very inspired by the work he does. He was the youngest Pakistani to operate a research nuclear reactor, and he was also a member of an award-winning team that proved for NASA that CO2 can be removed from different frictionalizing systems, if I'm right. And now you're working through Pakistani Maholiyati Tahaffuz movement to address environmental concerns in Pakistan. Good morning. Thank you so much for coming in today. I actually know you from before, and I've been privy to your work for the last 4 or 5 years, and I'm completely in awe of you. How are you today?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm good. Just excited for this conversation, excited to get into it.
Great, that's great. So let's talk climate then.
Yeah, so something that I was just reading a few days ago was actually in this book by Michael Mann, who is a professor at Yale University, who's been addressing the structural problems of the climate crisis. And one thing he talks a lot about is how young people are going to be the voices that prevail through it. And I feel like that's very related to Pakistan. So as someone who's probably been in this space for a very long time now, can you tell us a little bit more about what it meant for you to get into these spaces and break the glass ceilings?
Well, okay, so I got into the environmental, I wouldn't call it the scene or environmental activism about 4 or 5 years ago. Before that, environment had always been part of my journey, but it had been on the periphery. For example, working at the nuclear reactor, I also had to work with a little bit with nuclear waste. For example, the work that we did for NASA to remove carbon dioxide from the airstream without there being any moving parts. The main purpose was that astronauts need to be plumbers, they need to be doctors, they need to be pilots, they need to be engineers. So just to make their life easier, we wanted there to not be moving parts so they don't break down. But we ended up removing carbon dioxide from the airstream, utilizing deep cold or deep space.
Yeah.
So that was interesting as well, to work to figure out how we can get rid of CO2 and turn it into energy as well. Because
exactly.
There was H2O, water, which we pulled out from where we pulled out hydrogen, and then we combined with CO2 to produce methane to produce energy.
Yeah.
Then coming back to Pakistan, of course, I started
as glass ceilings.
Yeah, garbage cans, sustainable waste management. That was also another. It was interesting as far as glass ceiling is concerned. Getting these achievements in the US was much easier than even starting.
That is something I said yesterday to someone. I said it's easier to work in the UN than it is to work in Pakistan as in the climate space. And that's something I really wanted to talk to you about, because it's not just about glass ceilings here, it's about glass ceilings everywhere. And you, as the youngest Pakistani to do that, it must have been a completely different journey for you, because you had to open those doors yourself.
Right. Yeah. It was all about asking the right questions, I guess. And so as I was saying, when I tried starting Garbage Can, I got resistance from government departments as well, saying that waste can only be picked by the provincial department or by Sindh Solid Waste Management Board. I was like, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
There should be some form of licensing or some form of contractual. But anyway, we ended up starting Garbage Can, and then of course we cleaning up waste. And then there were resistance from other government departments and everything as well. It was a strange case of egos. More than I guess that's what the glass ceiling is all about. It's all about people's egos and trying to work around them. But I ended up getting it done because it was a matter not just of getting some work, but also I wanted to live in a cleaner city, or at least in a space where I know that at least I could be satisfied that I was trying to get things done, or I was trying to clean up the city.
100%.
And from there, of course, I realized how waste management and garbage and everything is very intersectional with other environmental issues, such as urban flooding, health, smog,
all these problems are intersectional. That's something that I think even through the Green Hour, as I bring on each guest, it's the idea of debunking these problems as specific boxes and showing that they're all kind of melted in together. And when you address one, you're addressing 100 other. And I think that's also something I would want to ask you, like coming into like the purpose of the Pakistani Maholiyati movement, like how did you go from garbage can to working as like on a research, academic research, and then scientific research, and moving forward into grassroots organizing, and then also climate reform?
Yeah, I guess that's I already touched a little bit upon the evolution of my because like I actually went from science to grassroots, and it's been interesting because while working at the nuclear reactor, I've worked with particles. I've worked with alpha rays, beta rays, and gamma rays, alpha particles, beta particles, and gamma rays, and how beta particles say travel faster than the speed of light.
Yes.
In water, because nothing travels faster than the speed of light otherwise. So that was interesting, working at the very minuscule level, at the atomic level. And then working with NASA, we had to work with deep space, which is the cosmos or the macro. But since coming back to Pakistan and since entering the environmental phase, I've been working on the terrestrial level.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, you know what? Like I've done all three.
You've done it backwards.
Exactly. So instead of starting with the terrestrial and then moving up, but like I've worked with. So working in this space, it's been interesting, and we are doing. We will be moving into research on this end as well. But as far as activism is concerned, it was a matter of I want to live in a space where everything is good, where everything is okay.
100%.
So when the rains happened of 2020, when
2020,
DHA and like other spaces of Karachi, of course, were
completely impacted.
So it was interesting how DHA took up in protests and all sorts of stuff. So it was interesting to see the contrast that where the grassroots have always been drowning in say filth as well.
Yes,
and urban
floods are not new in Pakistan.
Yeah, exactly. But when the DHA got flooded, everybody was like, okay. So that was interesting to notice as well, that the DHA people got worried when the floods came to them.
100%.
So and then of course COVID happened, and then the Bandel Buddhu Island thing issue happened. Again, it was a matter of justice. It was a matter of that you want to develop the islands. How about you develop Karachi first?
Exactly.
So we fought that case. We stopped that. We stopped construction on the islands. It was especially because they were going to destroy the mangroves over there and the biodiversity over there. And so that very easily evolved to now pushing for a nature reserve in that space, in the delta. Again, similarly, coming back to the urban flooding thing. Urban flooding mainly happens because of trash blocking the stormwater drains. But then there were housing societies well, not societies, I guess. There were houses on Gujar and Orangi Nala that were being destroyed.
I was working on the Gujar Nala eviction cases as a researcher and helping organize.
Yeah. So when that happened, when the Gujar Orangi Nala houses broke down, it still floods because the trash is still blocking those stormwater drains. Yeah. Right. So and then again it became a matter of justice that you've destroyed the Gujar and Orangi Nala houses. You've destroyed or demolished Nasla Tower because it was illegally made. Then how about MR though? Because MR is also illegally made, and DHA has no legal right to reclaim any land on the ocean. So again, it's a matter of justice.
It's all like a process that you go through, and that's kind of like what your work has also been about, like moving into climate reform and like resilience and like connecting grassroots levels into like litigation action, basically.
Yeah. And as far as MR is concerned as well, so as you talked about resilience and grassroots action and litigation, as far as MR is concerned, it will impact Karachi's coastal resilience.
Yeah.
Because if you're building 40 towers or like on the coast and you're dredging up the seabed and you're building a brace wall without there being a proper environmental impact assessment, then it will impact the channel and the coast all the way up to Port Qasim on one end and all the way.
Yeah, because they're all interconnected. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it was a matter of living a normal life.
Yeah.
And that's what
that's what we all want.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So we'll have a little short break and then we'll come back and we'll kind of get into specific ideas, because I feel like there's a lot of dread around the climate crisis, and I feel like but people within it who are working in these spaces are actually very hopeful, and that's the difference. And I feel like that's something civil society really has to learn about, because with climate resilience and climate reform, you have to have hope and you have to channel positive energy into the work you do in any field. The question that I wanted to ask you, Ahmad, was about how your individual action, obviously as a researcher, has led to collective action in Pakistan as a whole, because obviously last week was the climate march, and I was there and I actually heard you talking specifically so much about what we as Pakistanis have to do and where our role fits into this, because even if we're not big polluters, there's so many damages. Losses and damages are basically a part of the Pakistani community, and how can we as Pakistanis in different fields, young, old, researchers, scientists, teachers, doctors, be involved and actually understand where we can play a positive impact? So how can our individual identities amalgamate into this collective action? Because I remember you saying it's not just about getting finances for the losses and damages, but actually mitigating and adapting communities and asking how can we constantly not have the same damages year after year, because a lot of these calamities won't change, it'll just become worse.
Well, it was more of a realization that many other people know a lot more than I do as far as indigenous communities are concerned, or their own communities are concerned. So, for example, working on a nuclear reactor, the research that I did on Cherenkov radiation, that's blue glow.
Yeah.
that itself wasn't an individual effort.
Yeah.
I was doing the research, but I was supported by several different types of groups, right? Then coming back to Pakistan, when I started Garbage Can, and we started picking up recyclable items, we started working with festivals, etc., and so on and so forth, and then working with organizations and the University of Karachi, and then households. It became very obvious. So for every place that I went, that people had positive or constructive suggestions as to how to get do things better. And I learned a lot about the waste management industry by working with scavengers, or working with the janitors and sweepers that we don't really think that they would know a lot about. And they pointed me to various issues such as why urban flooding happens, why
because they're in a perspective where they're constantly observing these things and they're part of that system. It's just that they don't get a platform to voice out their concerns. So it's a lot about that.
So, I wanted to ask a question. Sorry, do you know what the word for recycling is in Urdu?
I actually don't.
It's simple. It's kabar or kabadi, like a recycling.
That makes
So
so much sense.
That the people in the grassroots, they know a lot more about the recycling slang or the terminology that they've made in Pakistan than say we the more privileged. We know the English terms, sure, but the local, as far as the local industry. So that's when I realized, I need to speak with more and more people, and have this be an inclusive discourse. And that's when I started going and meeting people and sitting with them and learning what the various issues are.
Yeah. And that's also something that I think is really important, because there are also so many environmental codes that have been passed in litigation and on a provincial level that haven't been implemented. They address sustainable waste. And because Karachi is such an industrial hub, there's so much urban waste here that just gets discarded and disregarded. And even hospital waste, hospital waste was ending up at Seaview, medical waste that's essentially extremely dangerous to biodiversity, to human beings, to children, was ending up on our streets. And I feel like that's why it's a big part. So when you're talking about waste management, you're talking not just about how to clean up your waste, it's so much about the maintenance of a safe and healthy environment. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. So, and that's something, do you feel like there's something you'd want to say to a lot of people who like move into like climate despair? Because there is so much doom about it. Like last week, they were, I think 4 consecutive days we've broken global temperatures, and this is happening all over the world, be it the global north, be it the global south. I mean, Pakistan has one of the hottest places on earth in Sindh, in interior Sindh, and I feel like reading all these news articles, it's a lot for people to handle. And as someone who's been in that position, I know the movement in itself and observing these grassroots organizations and all of these like amazing environmentalists, there's so much hope in their work. And how do you keep the hope up in your work?
Well, I guess that's another reason why we need to work with each other and work with everybody else, because it's when one is down or feeling despair, the other can lift us up. So I'm not sure how I keep the hope up. It's more about just getting things done.
Yeah.
Because I guess not doing anything about it or of falling in despair. Sure. I mean, you can't really help falling in despair, but it's better to do something about it than not doing anything.
You grow in discomfort.
Yeah, exactly. So at least like I am content in the sense that I know that I am trying at least my best.
As you should be.
And we're trying to bring out each other's best.
Yes, that's exactly the thing that keeps a lot of things going, because I just remember reading so many articles the last week, and I feel like it's become a very mainstream conversation in Pakistan, and that's something that like, okay, now there's noise about it. What can we make? How can we channel this noise into effective action and actually come up with solutions? Because there's so many solutions that are in front of us, but we're not able to pick up at them because there's so many problems to address, especially in Pakistan, because we do not run short of problems. We will always have them. But something I always try to tell people as like a very young person in these fields, like I am no expert, but even I can tell you, if I can do something, anyone can. That's kind of something I always like tell anyone. There is no reason to sit with your despair. Your despair is an act of discomfort, and that can channel into effective action.
Right. So why don't you tell us a bit about the work that you've done, say the research that you did?
Yeah. So I work a lot in youth advisory in different like UN spaces as well, and also on a grassroots level. So I work in Fridays for Future. So it's a youth-led international framework, and I work in MAPA, so it's most affected peoples and areas, and I work in the international chapter. So I have been doing a lot of grassroots research in Pakistan also with different like organizations, be it through like SOC films or like different heritage tours, and also academic research, and like getting institutes to actually change their own like sustainable policies. I also like helped with COP26 and writing advisory as a young person to the National Assembly on the implementation of different environmental codes. So for me, all of this started with just selling compost at the farmers market, and now I've gotten into policy advisory, which is something which is really random for people my age, but I enjoy it to another level. And I'm currently working in the UN Women Coalition within FFF, because we are youth advisors to different like CSW frameworks, and and they're all from a global south perspective, which is really needed, because usually in like international spaces, I'm usually the only Pakistani in the room, and it's just very interesting to see, when you know so much about where you're from, to see how little people know about it, because we're either known for floods or something not positive. So it's really interesting to be someone who can break that glass ceiling, essentially. Like someone asked me like, what Arab state is Pakistan a part of, and I was like, it is not an Arab country. Right. It's South Asia.
So the research that you did on Gujarat,
yeah, I was helping with the lawyers with the research they needed for different like case studies for it. Yeah. Okay. This was in 2021.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I got into these spaces, but I would just love to highlight your work more than mine. Right. But yeah,
it's all about lifting each other up.
It's all about lifting each other up, exactly. Ahmad Shabbar is still here with us today, and we have really interesting questions to get into. Ahmad, I was talking about this to you during the break as well, and something about like climate resilience, and so much about like the origins of like the Pakistani Maholiyati Tahaffuz movement. So essentially essentially resilience is the ability to endure and to withstand and to go through these processes coming out stronger. So what is climate resilience to you, and how has it like led to the origins and led to the core of the work you do, and how it represents the core of the Pakistani Maholiati Tahaffuz movement?
Right. Well, okay. The word resilience, unfortunately, in the Pakistani context, I feel like has been used in a very negative or manner, or if not negative, in a manner to basically somewhat call Pakistanis dheet, or call Pakistanis anything can happen, and of course Pakistanis will bear the brunt of it and still come out. Well, if not stronger, then at least come out of it anyway, alive, and then continue living however they want to. So what I noticed with climate resilience, it's also about changing the systems to be able to withstand whatever is coming, or if not, withstanding whatever is coming, but at least being ready for various natural disasters, such as the urban flooding, or landslides, or Gulf events, or cyclones, etc. Which we're not even
close to ready for.
Close to being ready for basic issues such as urban flooding, let alone the impact of climate change at this point in time. So whatever we're noticing thus far is mainly because of environmental mismanagement, and rather than climate change. And climate change will, of course, exacerbate the issue. It will,
I think.
Sorry.
I think one thing about this is that as Pakistanis, we look at the problem as like, oh, we're not the ones who are producing this level of carbon in the world, so we're not like responsible for its management, which is a lot of the political argument, international argument, that we are not big polluters, we are only the ones suffering like losses and damages. But like our role in this is to manage ourselves to minimize these losses and damages.
That argument is extremely silly, I believe. That we're not responsible for producing carbon or producing pollution. So much of the impact of or much of the issues that are causing climate change. So we shouldn't be. We're not responsible for managing it.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. You're still responsible for managing it, because the flood will come into your home and everything as well. That's what I guess DHA was all about as well. I mean, the rest of the city is being flooded. We're not really responsible for caring for it. But then when their houses got flooded, they're like, oh shit, okay, sorry. So they're like, okay, yeah, all right, we need to start working on it. So I believe that argument is extremely silly. So, and we need to get out of it. We need to get ready for it right now, and we need to make climate, as I just mentioned, climate resilient systems, at least, which could include, say, improving on the NDMA, or the National Disaster Management Authority. It could include creating systems, or early warning systems, or pre-disaster management, or getting people ready, say, to evacuate. For example, at this point in time, do you know if Karachi has an evacuation plan, if there's an actual cyclone, or if there's a tsunami of sorts?
I was reading about the evacuation plan because I wasn't here when that entire cyclonic storm warning came through, and I just realized that the evacuation plan is just so loose-ended.
No, there wasn't any evacuation plan. They were just playing it by the ear. They were just,
it was like hour by hour.
Yeah, it was very extremely haphazard. An evacuation plan needs to be made public. Even say
like a fire drill.
Yeah, exactly. People in MR didn't know what to do. People in the city apartments didn't know what to do.
No one knew what to do, actually.
And DHCBC didn't know what to do. They're like, okay, we're going to install pumps that will throw water back into the ocean, which made no sense whatsoever. So with Pakistan Maholiati Tahaffuz movement, the way we're seeing it, it's not just going to be a reactionary organization. It will. I'm in the process of developing a team and actually putting together various internal systems as well, and policies that we will then be pushing for. So because I believe that environment is the very basis, it's the foundation. Of course, because we ourselves are part of nature, we are a product of nature, or product of creation, if you want to put it that way. And on the other side, जो पहचान जिसको कहते हैं, how like our identity is from environment as well. Somebody who lives by the coast, they're known by the ocean.
Yeah.
Or a fisherman is
Fisherfolk,
known
farmers.
a fisherman is known by the fish that he catches.
Yeah.
The farmer is known by the farm or the
produce he puts.
crop that he produces. Somebody who lives in the mountains is known by the mountain he lives on. Similarly, our economy depends on environment as well. A fisherman actually sells
became
fish.
a country.
Yeah. A farmer sells his crop. Like a mountain, like a person living on the mountain, he might have an orchard of apples, or he might be mining in that area, for example. So it's these things, and then so basically, our culture and our economics is based on environment. Then on top of that, we have politics per se. And politics is basically could either be exploitative, it could be manipulative of the foundation that it stands on, or it could be a negotiation of sorts which improves people's lives, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I look at it. Look at the system right now.
Yeah.
The system right now, especially the political system right now, the politics that's happening, is more exploitative.
Yeah.
It's just a matter. It's just power politics at the moment. It's not politics that serves people.
It's not politics around policy, and I feel like that's something that so many grassroots organizations and even student-led organizations now work on. It's so much not about even just awareness building, it's about the awareness of specific policies that we can have and create, and that's something that also shifted my work into moving away from just activism and awareness into if I can understand what policies are, I should 100% go into that field and pertain into specific environmental policies or policies that affect everyone, be it internationally, be it nationally, provincially, locally, in school policies even. It's just all a trickle-down effect. As you said, how you work backwards, it's about even from the international level to a national level to a grassroots level. It's both ways it works, as long as you're getting involved wherever you are. You don't have to be a scientist, you don't have to be an environmentalist, you don't even have to be you don't even have to have a BA. I do not have a BA. I'm a high school graduate going to university, so anything is possible at this point. And that's exactly the note that I try to leave it on, because that's what fuels climate resilience. And is that what essentially fuels your climate resilience?
Yeah, but at the same time, of course, we also need to realize that reforms are always should help the grassroots.
Yes.
Reforms are always
they are built from the grassroots. Yeah. They are not
sorry. Reforms are always top to bottom, and relief is always bottom to top.
Yeah.
So that's why we need policies that provide relief to the grassroots first, and we need policies that bring about reform at the highest level.
100%.
Because say for example, if our prime minister doesn't know what to talk about at say the Paris summit, or he just simply keeps on borrowing, or his policy is just to simply keep borrow more and more money and put us more in debt. That's not going to help us in the future. In fact, that will actually
make it worse.
Yeah. And we won't be able to call ourselves climate resilient anyway, because then the normal Pakistani will be going more further in debt.
Yeah.
So for example, they need to say reform the world, or they need to push for reform in the World
financial
Bank,
reforms, environmental reforms, how financial aid gets dispersed. Is it in a loan system? Is it in debt relief? Is it in, where does it even go? What adaptation projects does it fund? I feel like that's so much what is a Pakistani's role in all of this. It's not so much about okay, this is a problem. It's about how can we address that problem.
Yeah. So as far as Pakistan Mawliyati Tahaffuz movement is concerned, it's not going to just be about climate marches. It's not going to just be about grassroots discussions or research. We will hopefully challenge them electorally as well in the future.
As you should.
Because in order to actually create policy changes, it's one thing to advise on policy, and it's another to actually make policy.
Yeah.
So we need to get into the electoral system and challenge them in elections.
Yeah. So one thing that I'm trying to do on the show is kind of leave every guest that I'm going to have with like an end question, and I feel like that was something I was asked when I came on the show as a guest, is like, what is a specific climate myth that you think is really big about the movement, and how would you like to debunk that?
Right. Well, at least in Pakistan, the climate myth that I'm really concerned about is, and we've already touched upon it as well, that Pakistan is just doesn't even contribute 1% to the climate change issue, and so we're not responsible for the management of it. I believe that's one myth that we really need to, or that's a mistake that we
make a lot
as well. Yeah. So we need to really get out of that, and we really need to prepare, because even if Pakistan doesn't contribute,
there's so much more to be done.
Yeah, exactly, because we will bear the brunt of it.
Yeah, like you were just telling me in the break also about like an example that you had yesterday talking to students from Indus.
There are students at Indus Hospital. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, and how you would ask them, what have you done for the environment? And I feel like their responses are so prevalent into like the civil society disconnect and what we can actually like work on, because 100% that is like the main attraction. It has been like tree plantations have been a really big thing in Pakistan, because we do have like the largest man-made forests, but it's so much not just about planting new trees, but about the maintenance of the biodiversity that we already have. So can you just like touch a little bit more on that?
So I mean, it was extremely simple. For example, I've only taken part in 1 or 2 tree plantation drives, but through our public interest litigation and through say just working on Bandel Buddhu Island and pushing the Sindh government to actually put out a notification declaring that those islands are also protected, I've saved millions of trees.
Yeah.
So just thinking that going and planting 1 tree, and we don't need to get involved in litigation or active grassroots work. I think that's one thing that we really need to get out of. We need to get out of our armchairs and actually get into the grassroots. The other thing that we mainly the more privileged and educated people believe is that the grassroots isn't aware of climate change issues, or they aren't aware of what climate change even is. I believe that's a mistake that many of us make, because they know a lot more than us. Because they're seeing the changes in real time. Whereas, say, for example, I would normally go from my home to my work and back to my home. Or as a student, I would go from my home to KGS and then back. Right. So I didn't really see climate change happening in real time. Whereas many of these grassroots people, the fisher folk people, the indigenous people, farmers, etc., they're seeing it happen in real time. So they know a lot more than us. They might not be aware of the jargon that we use, but that's mainly gatekeeping per se, and in the scientific community, that's also that is called gatekeeping. The more scientific terms, the more abbreviations that you use, the more the climate jargon, NCQG, or
you don't need that jargon.
So they I mean, that's basically keeping people out. So that's one change that we need to make. That we need to make things more inclusive.
That I feel like that's such a great note to also like tune out of the show with. Like, it's about inclusivity, it's about community, it's about reform, resilience, resistance, and how all of these things channel into actual work. So it's not just about a tree plantation. That 1 tree can be a start of a conversation. It cannot be the end. It can be the start of something, but it doesn't end there. There's so much, like, Pakistan is so topographically rich, and it's so rich in the type of nature it has, and there's so much to maintain, like from the glacial sheets to the Arabian Sea to the delta to the mangroves to like urban diversity, even, and like even ethnic and religious diversity in places like Karachi. This is something that we also have to maintain, and which is something so many organizers like you are doing very successfully.
And as you mentioned the glass ceiling, and you were extremely kind saying that I've broken glass ceilings, but I feel like within Pakistan Mawliyat-e-Tahafuz movement, it's my responsibility to help others break it further. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it's a trickle-down effect. And that's the note that, is there any closing words that you would like to share with our audiences here today?
Well, there's one of my mentors who mentioned it to me. The Urdu muhavra that says "Jaan hai to jahan hai." It's basically keeping our own lives, etc. First, because if we stay alive, then we can get things done. But with the climate issue coming up very quickly, it's more about jahan hai to jaan hai, because if we don't have our environment and our homes and everything intact, then what's the point of living? So we need to flip that on its head. Jaan hai to jahan hai ke baat purani hui. It's about jahan hai to jahan hai now.
100%. Thank you so much for coming on today. I really, really appreciate it. I'm such a fan of your work, and I've been following it for so many years, and it's really like fruitful to actually have a conversation with you. And I know we will probably collaborate on multiple projects throughout, be it the Climate Action Center, be it different advisories. I'm always popping up into these spaces. But thank you so much for educating our audience today and leaving the weekend on a fruitful note.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I will be leaving everyone with, please tune in next week to The Green Hour with Fatemah Sultan.